after I saw the headlines on Friday night, I was so surprised that we didn't write the story, Apple is going to die on Thursday, right? Because if they have 145% tariffs to face on Chinese goods, and this is essentially a Chinese company in terms of production, right? They can't sell anything globally.
Yeah, they were in trouble. They were on the brink of a crisis if this held. I think the expectation was that this would not hold. So here was the plan. Before this exemption came into place, they were really looking at repurposing their India operations to become basically their U.S. operations in terms of supply chain. Right? They were trying to quickly get to a point where they can build basically all the iPhones they needed for the U.S. in India, which throughout this process, all indications were to have a much lower tariff than China. Then this exemption came into place. The 145% was removed, and we went down to the 20% that's just around fentanyl and stuff like that. Now Trump and Lutnick, they're all saying that there's going to be a new tariff for devices with semiconductors, which obviously would apply to the Apple products. But all things considered, it's very likely that's only going to be a slim percentage of what that 145% would be. So, in other words, with this exemption, Apple avoided its biggest crisis and supply chain issue since COVID hit 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up India because Apple makes about 20% of its iPhones in India, we've recently reported. But I want to get into the relationship of Tim Cook with the president, Tim Apple, as I think he called him in his first administration. I mean, how open is that dialogue?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Tim Cook and some of the government affairs people at Apple, a guy named Nick Amon, they have a very open relationship with the Trump administration. They've been lobbying them hard over the past couple of weeks on these tariffs. I mean, this would have been destructive to Apple. It would have raised prices probably by a few $100s at least. It would have created all sorts of supply chain issues for them. They've been preparing for this. We just put out a story that according to the latest data, iPhone shipments surged 10% between the beginning of January through March. Wow. Not because people were buying more, but because Apple was stockpiling their U.S. channels. This was something we reported on a few weeks ago. Not only Apple, but Meta, Google, a few other companies are doing this. They were stockpiling because anything you had stateside when tariffs hit, it wouldn't be subject to that tariff. Now they have a little bit of breathing room. There wasn't much breathing room. Apple's operations people were burning the midnight oil on this the past several weeks. They had the India plan in motion. They needed to ramp up production big time there. Now they have a few more weeks to figure out how they're really going to do this, how they're going to spread things around to avoid major price increases.
What's the best way to describe the impact to the consumer? Because maybe it's not as bad as it could have been, but is there going to be a significant impact overall? And I would point out, even though with Apple's rise today, it's still down almost 18% on the year.
Here's the biggest problem. It's the fluctuation. We're sort of on a roller coaster. One day they're going to have to move everything to India. One day they can stick to China. One day they're going to have to move everything to the US. We really don't know. So it's hard for Apple at this scale with this many units on the line to make these adjustments because they don't know what's going to happen between Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and then to the following month. It's all very sporadic. So it's very difficult to get a sense of what they're going to do. In my view, the best thing they can do is diversify the supply chain, keep working towards that. Right now, they're diversified across a few countries in South Asia, right? The iPhone primarily is China and India, but they got to get the iPhone into more places. There's a line in Brazil right now. It's very small, so maybe there's going to be some talk of expanding that. Maybe they can do some production in Mexico, but certainly they need to go global and really copy the model they built. The India situation, people don't understand why India became a thing to begin with. It's because of tariffs also. India was going to put a massive tariff on Apple for exporting iPhones from China to India. Apple wanted to break into India because they know this is going to be this big market into the future. So they had to build production facilities in India to not get that tariff. Now they're using it to avoid tariffs elsewhere.
But are they going to eventually be building iPhones in like the Raleigh-Durham area? Are they going to put them together near Cupertino? Is Texas the right place? I mean, will they do it in America, Mark?
I don't think there's going to be an iPhone built in America this decade, maybe even the next decade. I think it's going to take a while. The iPhone, you're not going to believe this, but there's a lot of handmade portion into this. The iPhone design doesn't change a lot these days, but any new color, any new tweak they make, a slightly bigger camera, it means they need to retool the line. That's something that Apple engineers are actually going to China. Lots of Apple engineers spend a lot of their year in China re-architecting the line to produce these things. If you have a robotics and automated-based facility, that's something that Lutnick has talked about wanting and other people as well. You can't adjust machinery to new designs as quickly as you can adjusting lines by hand. So they're in a bit of a pickle.